Hello, I'm Malcolm Haslett.
I'm Janice Baker. The Adelaide Fringe is in full swing, so what does that have to do with the South Australian suffragette Muriel Matters?
Find out next on Our Time.
Malcolm?
Yes, Janice?
Don't say it like
Oh,
that.
sorry. Yes, Janice.
Yes, thank you. Be excited. We should be excited. We're talking about the Fringe.
I'm so excited, but mind you, with all of the issues with people being saying the wrong thing or the right thing or being provocative or whatever else, it's a bit unsure of what you can say.
Or touch. No,
Harassment.
You're a good boy.
Okay. And you're a good girl, and I've known you for so long.
You have.
Who'd bother?
Please. Can we move on now?
Yes, because we have a very special guest.
Yes, we
now,
do.
Now, the Adelaide Fringe is in full swing.
Yes,
Have you been swinging with the Fringe?
I have.
With the sari on the top or something?
Love it.
Joanne Hartstone is our very special guest on this episode of Our Time. Welcome.
Welcome, and I apologise.
Thanks for having
Why?
me.
What did you do?
No,
I touched you.
I apologise for.
It's all right. It's quite apt considering some of the things we might be talking about coming
okay.
up.
Well, there you go. Last year, you had an enormous hit.
I did.
During the Adelaide Fringe,
Yeah.
which was called...
The Girl Who Jumped Off the Hollywood Sign.
And did you?
Well,
no, don't tell it. No, don't. Just in case you do it again. But the beauty of that show was not only did you star in the show, it was a one-woman show.
Yes, and I wrote it as well.
I was about to say that. But you were then able to take it to...
Well, I took it to Hollywood.
Exactly.
Straight after Edinburgh. Straight after Adelaide. And then I took it to Edinburgh. And then I've taken it to New York as well.
Edinburgh being the largest Fringe festival in the world.
Yeah.
And New York being the...
Amazing.
New York.
Theatre
Hollywood
Mecca.
being... Hollywood.
Yeah.
Joanne, how does that happen? How does a girl from Adelaide get to do something? I admire you greatly because I think that is such an achievement.
Thank you.
But how did that happen?
A lot of hard work and a lot of people seeing the show and believing in me as a performer and a lot of networking, but somehow with the right connections and the right timing as well. The Girl Who Jumped Off the Hollywood Sign was a little before the Me Too movement and the Harvey Weinstein allegations.
And me touching Janice.
Hence why I said it might be a bit apt. So suddenly I had a show which was spot on timing with all of these social movements happening, and it became a bit of a timely hit. Not only that, but it was also a great South Australian production. And
a wonderful subject that people probably don't know very much about.
Well, or some people love it. The golden age of Hollywood.
Yes.
Who doesn't love those movies?
Right.
But was it Hollywood or Hollywood Land then, the sign?
So when my show was set in 1949, and it looked back over
Hollywood.
So it was Hollywood Land. It was just before the person who was responsible for looking after the sign got drunk one night and drove his car into the H, and the H exploded. So that's why they rebuilt.
It's just Hollywood.
And now it's just Hollywood, and they also then rebuilt in the 70s a metal version which could stand the test of time a bit more. So mine is set pre-car disaster on the H.
But you're an actor, obviously.
I am, yeah.
But you're also a producer and a presenter. And in this year's Fringe, you're doing so many things.
I mean, I'm
including another one-person show. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
It's huge. How do you cover all of that? I mean, do you sleep?
No. No, but I also have an army of friends and colleagues who just come together and make the things happen. I'm certainly not a one-man band at all. But I run a venue. I run a black box theatre in the Adelaide Botanic Gardens called the Noel Lothian Hall. This year we have 14 productions at the Noel Lothian, and it's a lovely little oasis, but still in the Botanic Gardens, so very accessible for people.
I don't think I've heard of that.
Because she's just doing it this year.
Well, we've been doing it for 3 years.
Oh, have you? Oh,
yeah. Okay. It's the back of the old tram building.
Right.
So, and it's turned into a convention centre, and then we transform it into a theatre. and have a whole variety of shows from theatre to magic.
Well, name a few. What have you got on this year?
So we've got loads of local shows. We've got some burlesque, like Once Upon a Teaser, which is a Disney-themed burlesque.
Not a children's show.
Not a children's show.
Okay.
We have Naughty Hands, which is a deaf comedian. We have a lot of magic in there as well, tricky business and subconscious. I've got a couple of shows coming over from the UK. One of them is called Carried Away, which is about a woman's process in becoming a mother. Another show called Orpheus, which is a fusion between soul music and the legend of Orpheus going down into the underworld. So, I mean, some incredible productions at the Nickelodeon this year. And yeah, we put them all together.
You're tired
and
now?
Feel exhausted, yes.
So, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, really, of all the things that I bring together for Adelaide. So I've curated the Nickelodeon. I also have a couple of shows at the Treasury 1860. And I've got a show at the Royal Croquet Club, which is We Live by the Sea. And a very exciting thing that I've put together in conjunction with the Mural Matters Society and the Centre of Democracy is a soapbox for democracy, which is a series of sort of stump speeches, I guess you could call them, like a speaker's corner.
Right.
And it's at the corner of Kintore Avenue and North Terrace. It's a free event.
Yes.
So it's right in the heart of the city.
Right at the heart of the city, along where the lights are.
Oh, okay.
On North Terrace. And
I love that. I love those lights.
But it's going to be terrific that every night you can see a different speech from a South Australian politician or a political influencer.
Not actors?
We've got actors, yes. So we've got South Australian writers who have researched historical figures. So we've got a speech by Mary Lee, Catherine Helen Spence, Don Dunstan.
That's why the poster's got Don with his pink pants
Absolutely.
on.
We couldn't have it any other way.
Wow.
So, and that's just a little bit, it's bipartisan. It's not sort of, vote one way or the other. It's just remember that we're a democratic place and we are very, forthcoming in our politics. And it's really important that the people of South Australia continue to be engaged in the political process.
Well, the people everywhere, in fact.
Absolutely. We're seeing it all over the world that we need to have particularly young people continue or bring them into the political fold, I guess.
Do you think a fringe like this gives people the scope to do these things that are perhaps more experimental than a mainstream performance?
Absolutely. The fringe gives performers like myself, artists like myself and my colleagues, it gives them a platform to be able to take risks. It's still expensive, don't get me wrong. I take my hat off to every single person who stumps up the money to put on a show during Fringe. And as well as the venues, all the risks that they take as well, and people travelling over. But art is so important to our society, and we have to keep innovating. We have to keep giving everyone a platform in order to take a chance and tell their stories or do their bits of work. Yeah. And that's why I think the Adelaide Fringe is so important for
Jo,
art.
I think there's another aspect too, because when you see something live as opposed to a movie or see it on television, because you were there and shared the same space as the performance, you remember it.
Much more.
You forget the movies, you forget the TV stuff. True. But funnily enough, it's the thing of going out to something and being part of a group of people and watching real things happen that are only ever going to happen that way once.
Absolutely.
And that's often forgotten in live performance. It's so easy to watch something on our phone now or on a tablet or on telly or however you want to watch, but it's amazing when you see real people doing real stuff. Yeah. You see, even your show, the Hollywood Sign Show, I can see that, although I never saw the performance, but I can see what I think that probably would be. Yeah. Had I seen it, I would have had a better connection in my head to really understand the story. So it's worth going out to see.
And there's an interesting phenomenon that happens with an audience sitting and watching something live. Their heartbeats start to synchronise. And so you are having a connection with the people next to you, whether you know them or not, when you're in a synchronised flow and energy. excitement.
Yes, we all laugh and cry
pathos.
together. Yes.
It's incredible, and that's the memory. But it's also incredibly emotional in positive and negative ways, and that's why I think live theatre and live performance is so important to continue to do.
Did you always, as a little girl, did
Yeah.
you always feel that this would be your engagement in life?
Yes, I did. I mean, you know, when I
How
was
old
two, I was going to be a princess. You know, I didn't know any better.
Wasn't everybody?
But then I started performing when I was 4.5, 5 years old, and I knew that it was in me at that stage, that there was something about the performance, and particularly the live performance side
But
of it.
did you also know that you would end up being a producer and a presenter?
No,
That's the
no,
other
I
thing.
didn't. I think a lot of people who think they want to get into theatre, they think acting is the only way, because
Yes.
it's the most visible side of it, of
Yes.
course.
Same
But-
as the movies. Everyone
Well,
thinks it's
exactly.
just the actor's
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Same as this. Of course, it is just Janice and I. I'm controlling the cameras with my feet, and you can't see what's attached to her. No, we have a great crew of people here.
Yes.
There are 12, I think, altogether who
Yeah.
make this come together, and
So
you only ever see us and the guests.
Exactly, but behind the scenes is
And
actually...
hang on, behind the scenes
Oh.
is Phil saying we
Time
have
up.
a wind-up.
Right.
We'll be back in a tick because I really want to talk to you about the Muriel Matters
Yeah.
show that you're doing.
And we have some beautiful photos to show you.
In a moment. Welcome back. Our special guest on this episode of Ad Time is Joanne Hartstone. Joanne, we've had on the show before the lady who I think wrote the first script for Muriel Matters, who is a local politician here in South Australia, whose name is Frances Bedford.
Yes.
I had to say all that just to make sure I got Frances's name right. But Frances is a very interesting politician herself.
Absolutely.
And to have done the research that she's done for Muriel Matters, did you go to her to get any help?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I wouldn't have touched this, actually, if it wasn't for Frances.
Right.
I'll tell you the story very quickly, but Frances, because
Time's
there we go, done. So Frances travelled to Hastings, which is where Muriel Matters, the Adelaide-born actress, agitator and suffragette, where she ended up living in the second half of her life. And she put a blue plaque saying Muriel Matters lived here at St Mary in the Castle, which is where Muriel lived. My director saw the plaque, he lives in Hastings, and his wife said, you should do a show about Muriel Matters with Joanne Hartstone, who's an Adelaide actress. And so Nicholas spoke to me, we'd already worked together for several years, and said, do you know about Muriel Matters? I said, not really sure. And thus the research began, and that was 4 years ago. And we are now putting on that daring Australian girl at Holden Street Theatres.
It's a truly fascinating story.
Absolutely.
Amazing lady.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of information there, and we've had photographs on the show of her throwing out the leaflets when, I think it was King George, the something or other, was tootling off to his coronation.
Edward, I think.
Edward.
So it was. She hired a hot air ship.
Yes.
With Votes for Women on the side, and this was pre-flight.
Yes,
really
amazing.
And the plan was to scatter leaflets over the king as he made his procession to open house.
No internet.
The Parliament. Also, interestingly, was
Called letterbox dropping.
No.
Well, it wasn't box, but
Haven't got
letter
to that
dropping.
point.
Yeah, exactly. But interestingly, the reason they did that was because the Women's Freedom League was banned from handing out leaflets on the ground. They were the only organisation that was banned. So they decided to take it up in the sky.
How wonderful.
So they did that, and Muriel was asked to do it because she had already won her spurs by chaining herself to the Women's Viewing Gallery in the House of Commons. She opened 13 branches of the WFL on a caravan tour. So she was the perfect person to go up in the air. And unfortunately, they crash landed and didn't reach their target. But then the next day were worldwide news.
Yes.
So New York was reporting about the hot air ballooning suffragette.
And this woman who was throwing things out.
And this incredible woman who was an Adelaide girl.
And she was forgotten.
And then she...
Sort of forgotten,
was
yeah.
telling us
But you know,
that
the
she
interesting thing, you're talking about having the speeches on North Terrace.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, did she ever agitate there?
Well, she left Adelaide when she was 28. She left Adelaide much sooner than that. She went over to Perth and continued to do a lot of performance. And she was primarily an elocutionist and an actress. She, funnily enough, with the Me Too campaign, she quit the stage because of certain abuses that affected less protected women than herself.
And there would
right
have
back
been,
then,
there would have been many in those days because there was absolutely no rights.
And of course, it was, if you were an actress, you were also considered to be a loose woman.
Yes.
Which she was not at all. She was highly articulate and very, very educated on her craft. So then she was an elocutionist and was performing a lot around Australia and was told that there were wonderful opportunities in London. So when she was 28, she went over to London. And that's when her political career started to evolve. So the next time she came back to Adelaide, she was a celebrated suffragette. And she really didn't do as many things in Adelaide before she left. Yeah. And then when she came back, she was lecturing around Australia on, the benefits of women having the vote, but also the history of feminism and looking at prison reform, because she herself was imprisoned in Holloway jail for a month, and that switched something on inside her as well. So even though beforehand she was entertaining, she then became an educator as well. An incredible woman.
Well, obviously,
yes,
but the fact she was an actor, the fact she was a performer, the fact she didn't have the nerves to get up in front of people to do whatever, clearly made the difference. And had she not had that background, she probably would never have become what she became.
And we have South Australia to thank for that. Because I don't know if you know this, but the reason we sound the way we sound is because elocution was taught in schools. They wanted us to sound different to the eastern states because we were a free settled state.
That's why we say dance and not
dance,
dance, and pool and not peel.
Or use. No.
Janice, you've got to stop using that language.
But then because of that...
Just because you're an immigrant.
Because of that, they had to do something with this skill. So then elocution sort of competitions became a really popular thing.
They were, weren't they?
And then that then led into a big elocution industry.
They survived well into the 1950s, probably early 60s here. I know, being a kid in those years, there were competitions and things that we're all involved in. The other interesting thing about her, though, and today's society, is that somebody like you, who, I mean, you're not a liberated woman because you've always been liberated.
Well, yes.
I mean, we've lived in a society where we're all equal, sort of thing. It's very hard for us to imagine not being like that.
I think that in some ways you're right. Don't get me wrong, though. Of course, I've faced challenges just from being a woman that I've noticed, but perhaps the men in the conversation hadn't noticed as much.
And a young woman, I should say, too, doing and having done what you've done.
Yeah, so, being taken seriously as a person, there's still been a few challenges, but certainly not in the same, same level.
But I actually think that's the same for men as well. I think in this conversation, which is not what we're here to have, but in this conversation, I think the way that it's become, the focus has been on the equality of women and women having the same rights. But in actual fact, men have the same issues that women have, and in a slightly different way. And part of it's to do with the male ego. But if you think women have got problems, and I'm sure there are a lot of guys out there who have suffered from similar sorts of bullying, demeaning things happening to them and so on, I think it's common throughout mankind. The fact that women now are talking more about it, the sexual thing has come up, and that's what's brought it to the fore.
Yes.
But I think there's always been that emotional stuff.
Well, I think Muriel's then theories and writings come straight back into play here. She was saying that there has to be a new movement in our culture which takes power away from the few and the elite, and a man or a woman is equal based on their character and what they bring to a society, not because of who they were born. Yes. So, and she wasn't anti-men either.
No, but that was more the system, wasn't it?
Yes.
Because when you talk about the South Australian thing with the dialogue, with the articulation, elocution, because the free settlers that came here were better educated and were not the convicts, that's the other issue that developed South Australia in a slightly different way.
We were very proud of our education, and therefore a really strong culture developed, and that was the world in which Muriel was brought up in.
Yeah.
So she was also an enfranchised woman. She voted twice before she went to the UK and realised that suddenly she was second class.
She had the vote here. And
so it makes sense that she did what she did.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, next week we're talking to the Lord Mayor of Adelaide, and Adelaide was the first city in Australia to have a council and to elect a mayor. And that was well before the eastern states. You know, these things, we don't always know about these things. Yeah. And so people like Muriel coming up is an interesting story. I'd also love somebody, here's a bit of a challenge for you for next year. Do a play about the first Lord Mayor of Adelaide, because their challenges must have been fascinating.
Absolutely. How do you define culture in a new place?
Yes, we mustn't get off the point though. So with Muriel Matters, you're performing the piece. How on earth are you doing that with all the other producing and presenting?
I have a fabulous team behind me.
We know that, but how are you
How am I doing it?
How did you rehearse the play? How did you write the play? How did
I actually wrote the play mostly while I was in New York doing The Girl Who Jumped Off the Hollywood Sign. And then bits and pieces, but also then I'd been researching for such a long time. So I know her story inside and out. So then coming back to Adelaide and jumping straight into rehearsals with Nicholas Collett, my director, and my designer, Tom Kitney, who's come over from the UK as well to develop a stunning show, absolutely beautiful. So with those two colleagues and myself, we rehearse every day.
They've worked you hard?
Oh, yes. I think maybe
I
might have worked them pretty hard too. And then just found the rules of the play. So this is the setup that we're going to live with, and then we play. You know, it's called a play for a reason. And we play with our own laws of the stage, and remember to keep it light, but it goes a mile a minute, because how do you pack a lifetime into a 60-minute show?
That's true.
So and deep and meaningful
absolutely.
too.
And you've got to find the humanity of Muriel as well.
What about the costumes and design? Are you looking like Muriel, or are you doing a modern piece?
No. So several months ago I contacted Nikki Fort, who does a lot of costuming for State Opera and Festival Theatre and the festival, and she thankfully agreed to come on board and create a stunning costume, which is
well, we'll have a look at some of those in just a minute, and we'll be back to actually see some of those costumes soon.
Joanne, we've been talking about all this beautiful work that you've done, but can we have a look at some of the photographs?
Absolutely. I was very, very lucky to be able to have a photo shoot at the House of Commons. Wow. They gave us permission to take some photos inside, and it was quite amazing actually to dress as a suffragette, and all of the people were fascinated with me. That picture there, by the way, is the old staircase from Henry VIII, and that is leading up to the house. And it was quite a stunning picture to take. Wow. And that was just outside. So that was an amazing day to be able to dress in period costume. And now, of course, it's 1918 was when women got the vote in the UK, so it's 100 years since women got the vote in the UK.
Something to celebrate.
Yeah, exactly.
But more here, if you'd lived here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So are you planning to take the show
to the
over
UK?
there again?
I think so. I think it's important. It's an important story, but also it's an important South Australian story.
Yeah,
and that's
it's a history of the world story. Really.
Well, of course it is. But more than anything, I love to champion South Australia and our history and our people, because we're fantastic. Why shouldn't we?
I agree. And if you're living elsewhere, you should come to Adelaide and check us out. Do you know, it's interesting, on all the news services, we're hearing a lot more about Adelaide in every news service every day, because there is so much stuff happening in this city. Jo, good luck with the Fringe.
Yes, congratulations on the work you've done already, but looking forward to all that's coming.
You need to be looking out for the name Joanne Hartstone, as the producer, the presenter or the performer in any of the Fringe shows here in South Australia. And until next time we meet, which will be with the Lord Mayor of Adelaide, keep yourselves nice till then.
Yes, absolutely. Take care. Look forward to your company.
See you
Bye
then.
for now.
Bye.